Welcome back to the Mike Bates Show. This is Mike Bates. Joe Biden has occupied the Oval Office for less than 10 days. Today is the 11th day, but since he took office at 11 a.m. Central Time on the 20th, and today is the 30th, it'll be exactly 10 days, about 3.5 hours from now. And Biden wasted no time undoing some of Donald Trump's most important America First policies. He's already ordered the mass release of criminal immigrants, allowed the Chinese Communist Party to infiltrate our power grid, and by the stroke of a pen, backed up by the power of federal money, ordered all public schools and some private schools to allow boys to compete on girls' sports teams and to shower in girls' locker rooms. And that's just to name a few. On his very first day in the Oval Office, indicating how much of a priority it was to him, Joe Biden signed an executive order allowing transgendered people to serve in the military. So does Biden's new policy mean a mustachioed Marine can wear a uniform skirt and tie his hair up in a bun while on duty? While this executive order was met with great fanfare by LGBTQ activists and jubilation that no person who wants to serve his or her country will now be denied the ability to wear the uniform of the United States military, that is actually quite false. There are many reasons people can't serve in the military. A long list of medical conditions can keep you out of the military. You can't join with various blood disorders, with terrible teeth, super bad vision, lung conditions, diabetes, and certain STDs will keep you out of uniform. All single parents and some married people, if they have kids, can't join the military without a waiver. Did you know that? And even a bad credit score can keep you out of the military. If you weigh too much or too little, that'll keep you out of a military uniform. If you're too short or too tall, you can't join the military. And I don't just mean people with dwarfism or gigantism. If you're under 4'8" or over 6'5", the military will not accept you no matter how strong and healthy you are. But if you have both a penis and breasts, well, you're now free to join. And the taxpayers will even pick up the tab for your hormone treatment and perhaps the cost of finishing the surgical procedures still necessary to complete your sex change transition. I remember when Barack Obama first allowed transgendered people to serve in the U.S. military, the social justice warriors pointed to Chris Beck, who now goes by Kristen Beck, as their poster boy, or poster girl, whatever, because Beck had served as a Navy SEAL. And that's true. Beck did serve as a Navy SEAL, but not as a transgendered Navy SEAL. He, she, it, whatever, served as a man, which corresponded to his biological sex. The physical transformation occurred after he left the military, but that timeline was never presented. The fake news back then presented it as if Chris Beck rappelled out of a helicopter in Abbottabad wearing a dress and high heels and single-handedly took out Osama bin Laden. He did not. Now, to be clear, that image I just painted in your mind was an exaggeration. He was not on the bin Laden raid at all. But he was a Navy SEAL. As a man in all ways. He changed to a woman after he left the military. But none of that matters to Democrats. Democrats want as many transgendered military personnel to serve as possible. Why? Because Democrats are more concerned about using the military to fight culture wars than to fight real wars. Now understand, if a military man wants to wear a dress when he's off base and not on duty, I have no problem with that. I think it's a little weird, but weirdness is not something we should ban. But on duty and in uniform? No. It's called a uniform for a reason. And that reason is so that the personnel look, uniform. And if some of the men are wearing skirts, that's not uniform. Remember the TV show MASH? Corporal Klinger wore dresses trying to get Section 8'd thrown out of the Army. Well, under Biden, he'd probably get a field commission to colonel and put in charge of the entire hospital. Or more specifically, the Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, which is where the acronym MASH came from. Joe Biden signed an executive order that enacted what was called a 100-day pause on deportations for some undocumented immigrants. Biden's Department of Homeland Security said it applied to pretty much every illegal immigrant except a few who are suspected of terrorism or espionage. And the Customs and Border Protection personnel were instructed to, and this is a direct quote from the instructions, quote, "As of midnight tonight, stop all removals. This includes Mexican bus runs, charter flights, and commercial flights until further notice," end quote. And it went on to even more sweepingly, and again I'm quoting the email, quote, "Release them all immediately," end quote. Now, the Department of Homeland Security is still trying to figure out how to implement that directive, because with government bureaucracy, immediately doesn't always mean immediately. But the obvious goal here is to keep as many illegal immigrants inside the United States as possible, so when Democrats grant them citizenship, they're already here and can more easily register to vote. To vote for Democrats, of course. On Joe Biden's sixth day in the Oval Office, he issued an executive order that the propaganda press told you would require the federal government to give contracts to American businesses over foreign businesses. And it was touted as a great America First policy that would create domestic jobs. But knowing that the Democrats never put America first like that, I actually read the executive order and the press release myself, instead of just accepting what I was being spoon-fed by the activists posing as journalists in the so-called news media. And what I discovered will shock you. Yes, the executive order does direct the federal government to, quote, "use terms and conditions of federal financial assistance awards and federal procurements to maximize the use of goods, products, and materials produced in and services offered in the United States. The United States government should, whenever possible, procure goods, products, materials, and services from sources that will help American businesses compete in strategic industries and help America's workers thrive," end quote. And those nice words make perfect sense. But the devil is always in the details. So here are the details. That order created, within the Office of Management and Budget, the Made in America office, the MAO. So the OMB will have an MAO. How do you pronounce that acronym? Will they say it with its letters as MAO? Or will they just say it as a single word, Mao, as in Mao Zedong? I suppose time will tell on that. But the Mao director will be appointed by the director of the OMB. And the very last paragraph of the White House's press release announcing the Made in America executive order concluded with this, and I'm reading it directly. Quote, "This order is deeply intertwined with the President's commitment to invest in American manufacturing, including clean energy and critical supply chains, grow good-paying union jobs, and advance racial equity. The federal government should buy from suppliers that are growing the sectors of the future and treating their workers with dignity and respect," end quote. Do you understand what that means? The key words there were clean energy, union jobs, and racial equity. While those are buzzwords the left uses in campaign speeches to get a thrill going up the legs of their supporters, when actually used in real policymaking, they are quite dangerous words. Mao is going to award government contracts to companies who are committed to clean energy, meaning they will be artificially incentivized, that's a synonym for pressured, to buy electric cars, install solar panels, and who knows what else. Maybe companies making financial contributions to Greta Thunberg and other climate change alarmists will qualify them for preferential treatment by the federal government when awarding contracts. Union jobs? What does that mean? Union jobs is just another way of saying artificially inflated wages and higher prices. So instead of awarding contracts to the lowest bidder, as has historically been the practice, companies will now get contracts if they're higher priced than their competitors, but they're unionized, or at least pay union wages. And what is meant by the words racial equity? If it means that all people should be treated equally regardless of race, that's a good thing. But you and I both know that's not what it means. What it means is that the government will adopt some kind of workforce racial quotas that companies seeking government contracts will need to abide by. In other words, if they want a government contract, they'll be forced to hire people based not on the content of their character or the quality of their skills, but by the color of their skin. And white people need not apply. And this is all on top of the racial set-asides that already exist in government contracting. And you know what else it could mean? It could mean that if you donate money to Black Lives Matter and other pro-Marxist causes, you'll get bonus points on your bid. But if you don't demonstrate your commitment to what the left calls racial equity, but is really an enforced form of racism, then you won't get those lucrative government contracts. So under the Biden administration, if you want to get a government contract, you'll dramatically increase your chances of getting it, even if you're the most expensive supplier, if you ditch your diesel delivery trucks and drive a Prius, if you fire your white employees and bring on what the left calls people of color, and if you donate money to Black Lives Matter. If you do that, you'll get government contracts. And if you don't do that, well, you can go out of business. And according to the left, you would deserve to go bankrupt. I mean, this is 2021, and we're a one-party state now. Businesses shouldn't be competing on price, experience, and quality. They should be competing on woke principles like climate initiatives, social justice, and power to the people, right? Well, no, they shouldn't be, but now they must. Uncle Joe just mandated it. Stroke of the pen, law of the land. Kind of cool, huh? If you don't recognize that quote, stroke of the pen, law of the land, kind of cool, it was said by Paul Begala in 1998 when Begala was an advisor to President Clinton. He said it when he encouraged Bill Clinton to implement through executive orders policies that Congress wouldn't approve. Real quick, because I'm running out of time. Uncle Joe also signed executive orders allowing the communist Chinese to help build America's electric grid. Yeah, because what could possibly go wrong with that, huh? And he signed an executive order prohibiting new oil and natural gas leases on federal land. And that land included tribal lands that are supposed to be somewhat autonomously governed by the federally recognized Indian tribes. Well, one of those tribes, the Ute Indian tribe in Utah, is upset about it because they were making good money off the royalties for the drilling that was taking place on their reservation. The Utes complained, but the Biden administration blew them off with the explanation that the executive order does not impact existing ongoing operations. Yeah, well, that just means a slow death instead of a quick death. And it's probably illegal anyway because we have treaties with these tribes that grant them significant sovereignty over their lands for things like that. But what's another treaty with the Indians broken by a Democrat president? Just add Biden to that very long list. By the stroke of a pen, Uncle Joe also rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement and canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, both of which will cost us tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs. There were other harmful executive orders too, but I don't have time to go through them all. When we get back from this final break, we'll discuss how it is certain the Democrats will dominate Washington for at least the next 2 years. But is it certain? Not necessarily. We had this exact same scenario 20 years ago, but the roles were reversed. Do you remember what happened? I'll remind you when the Mike Bates Show continues.